In this module, we look at the anthropology of religion and at religious diversity in the United States. By the end of the module, you should be able to identify and briefly describe key religious groups and religious diversity in the United States, use anthropological perspectives to explain the social function of religious practices among diverse cultural groupings, reflect on and critically analyze the influence of global and political forces in shaping religious diversity in the United States, and demonstrate critical thinking and intercultural knowledge by using the borderlands concept and anthropological perspectives and techniques in an ethnographic writing assignment. Right? This refers to ethnographic observation 2 on cultural borderlands due at the end of this module. There are 3 clips looking at evangelical Christianity and Islam in the U.S. The Gospel of Intolerance is a short New York Times op-doc piece based on Academy Award-winning filmmaker Roger Ross Williams's longer documentary, God Loves Uganda. This film looks at efforts by U.S. evangelical missionaries to remake the East African country of Uganda in God's image. The film unfolds at a time when Ugandan pastors and politicians, heavily funded by U.S. evangelicals, were waging a potentially deadly political, legal, and cultural campaign against gays. An excerpt from the 2006 documentary Jesus Camp looks at a highly emotional evangelical Christian camp in North Dakota from the point of view of the kids, the pastor, Becky Fisher, and more moderate Christian critics. If you're interested, you can watch the entire video on Netflix or borrow the DVD from Miami University libraries. The third clip is a 2015 ABC News story, U.S. Church Holds Muslim Prayer, recounting the first ever Muslim prayer service held at Washington, D.C.'s National Cathedral. These clips are followed by a discussion and replies in Canvas. There are 2 presentations in this module. The first, on the anthropology of religion, introduces some basic definitions and social science perspectives on religious practices. Please keep in mind that our purpose here is not to evaluate which religion is the correct one, but to understand how religions operate culturally and socially and in relation to political and economic life. In other words, our perspective here is from the social sciences rather than theology. The second presentation discusses religious diversity in the United States, looking at Greek Orthodox Christianity, religious symbols such as the cross and Muslim women's head coverings or hijab, the problematic separation between church and state in the U.S., the role of ritual in fostering unity but also division, and a brief survey of contemporary religious diversity. These presentations are followed by a quiz. There are 2 sets of readings there's just one set of readings in this module. So the first reading is by my Miami University colleague, James Below, and that looks at what he calls urban missionals as new kinds of emerging evangelicals in post-industrial Middletown, Ohio, and in the Walnut Hills neighborhood of Cincinnati. According to Below, the emerging evangelicals he profiles in this article have chosen to flee the world of suburban megachurches for a more authentic missional experience in struggling urban neighborhoods. This emerging form of Protestant Christianity builds on a long history of religious renewal that dates back to the Protestant Reformation. Below's ethnography, which involves accompanying locals on walking and driving tours of Middletown and Walnut Hills, is useful to us as we seek to gain insight into cultural diversity in the U.S. It may also provide some strategies for those of you still working on your Borderlands papers. In the article, Below defers to local experts who know and interpret their communities for him, resulting in cultural insight. The second reading by Isaac Weiner looks at the efforts of another post-industrial community, Hamtramck, Michigan, to adapt to increasing numbers of Muslim immigrants in this once predominantly Polish-American city. In particular, local complaints and debates have to do with the Muslim call to prayer, which is sounded from mosques 5 times per day. According to newspaper reports, in 2015, Hamtramck became the first U.S. city with a majority Muslim city council. You'll also read the field notes in Chapter 5, Disease, in Renegade Dreams. This chapter looks at different forms of injury and illness in Eastwood, including HIV/AIDS, mourning the loss of relatives who have died in early death, religious and medical healing, and efforts by local churches to bring in gang members. These readings are followed by study questions in Canvas. At the end of this module, Ethnographic Observation 2, you'll submit your papers on borders and borderlands in Canvas. Next, we turn to Module 10, wrapping up the last module of this course. Yeah! This is a shorter module that provides a brief review of key concepts and approaches from the course. I'll ask you to read a provocative essay by anthropologist Mark Nathan Cohen called Transforming the Culture of Intolerance, to finish Renegade Dreams, and to complete the course by taking the final.